In bed, in shower, or living room? Everywhere you want? The Giant Bride, said to the lonely cowboy. The drought had lasted 3 months, turning Bartholomew Higgins' land into a landscape of cracked earth and withered dreams. He stood on the sagging porch of his homestead, watching dust devils dance across fields that should have been green with spring wheat. His hands, calloused but thin, gripped the porch railing as if it were the only solid thing left in his world. Behind him, through the warped door, came the silence that had become his constant companion since Margaret's death. Not the peaceful quiet of contentment, but the heavy, suffocating silence of a 6-year-old girl who'd stopped speaking the day they buried her mother. Bart turned and looked through the window at Poppy. She sat at the kitchen table, her small fingers tracing patterns in spilled flour, her lips pressed together in that tight line that broke his heart daily. The doctor said she'd speak again when she was ready. 6 months had passed. She remained mute. The bank notice crumpled in Bart's pocket felt like an accusation. 60 days to pay $300 or lose everything. He had $47 to his name and a daughter who needed him to be strong. But strength had never been Bart's virtue. Even Margaret, God rest her, had sometimes looked at him with gentle disappointment when he'd backed down from confrontations, when he'd let other ranchers push him around, when he'd chosen peace over pride. That evening, after putting Poppy to bed with a story she couldn't respond to, Bart sat at the table with whiskey he couldn't afford and paper he'd saved for emergencies. This qualified. He wrote carefully, his penmanship the one thing his school-teacher mother had drilled into him. Widower with young daughter, seeks capable woman for marriage. Homestead needs work. Honest man, limited means, but willing heart. Child needs mother. I need partner. No false promises offered. He sealed it and rode into town the next morning, Poppy silent beside him in the wagon. At the territorial mail-order bride agency, the clerk read his advertisement and raised an eyebrow. Pretty bleak pitch, Mr. Higgins. Most men embellish a bit. Wouldn't be fair. Woman deserves to know what she's getting. The clerk shrugged and took his money. Honesty's rare. Maybe someone will appreciate that. 3 weeks later, a response arrived. The handwriting was crude but legible. I can work hard. I ask only for respect and safety. I will arrive on the 15th. Brunhilde. No promises, no expectations. Just a statement of terms. Bart appreciated that more than flowery declarations. He cleaned the house as best he could, repaired the bedroom door that had hung crooked for months, and tried to prepare Poppy for the arrival of a new woman in their lives. She listened with those solemn eyes, but gave no indication whether she understood or cared. On the 15th, Bart stood outside the general store, where the stagecoach made its weekly stop. Other townspeople gathered, curious about the mail-order bride arriving for the cowardly Bart Higgins. He felt their judgment like sunburn. When the stage rolled in trailing dust, his stomach knotted. The driver climbed down and opened the passenger door. "Ma'am, we've arrived." What emerged from that coach defied every expectation Bart had assembled. First came a hand, large as a dinner plate, gripping the doorframe. Then a leg, muscled and solid, encased in a boot that would have fit most men. Finally, ducking low to clear the opening, came Brunhilde herself. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her shoulders broad enough to fill a doorway. Muscle corded her arms, visible even through the sleeves of the most incongruous garment Bart had ever seen. A wedding dress, once white, now yellowed with age and travel, it had been patched and mended in a dozen places. The bodice strained across her powerful chest, the skirt shortened to accommodate her height, revealing work boots beneath. Her face was weather-worn, but not unkind, framed by dark hair pulled into a severe bun. The gathered townspeople fell silent. Someone whispered, "Good Lord!" Bart felt his courage, what little existed, drain away. This woman could break him in half without effort. What had he done? Brunhilde's eyes swept the crowd, cataloguing the stares and whispers with an expression Bart recognized. Weary resignation. She'd faced this before, many times. When her gaze found Bart, identified him by his obvious terror, something flickered across her features. Disappointment, perhaps, or just tired acceptance. Then Poppy moved. The little girl had been holding Bart's hand, hidden partially behind his leg. But now she stepped forward, her small face tilted up to look at this mountain of a woman. The crowd held its breath. Brunhilde looked down, her severe expression softening. Poppy's lips parted. For 6 months Bart had begged, pleaded, prayed for his daughter to speak. Now, in this impossible moment, her voice emerged as a whisper. "Are you really here?" Bart's knees nearly buckled. Brunhilde knelt, bringing herself closer to Poppy's level, though she still towered over the child. "Yes, little one. I'm really here." "To stay?" "If your papa will have me." Poppy looked back at Bart, her eyes suddenly bright with something he hadn't seen since Margaret died. Hope. She tugged his hand. "Say yes, Papa. Please say yes." Every eye in town focused on Bart. He looked at Brunhilde, this intimidating stranger in her bizarre bridal costume, and saw what he'd missed in his initial fear. Exhaustion, vulnerability, and desperate hope mirroring his own. "Welcome home," he managed. Brunhilde stood, retrieving a single worn carpet bag from the stage. As they walked toward Bart's wagon, the townspeople parted like water around a boulder. Whispers followed them, none kind. Bart helped Poppy into the wagon bed, then turned to offer Brunhilde assistance. She was already climbing up, the wagon creaking under her weight. She settled onto the bench, taking up most of it, and Bart perched on the remaining space, feeling diminished. The ride home was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Poppy sat behind them, humming softly, the first sound beyond words she'd made in months. Brunhilde stared straight ahead, her massive hands folded in her lap. Bart risked occasional glances, noting the careful way she held herself, as if trying to occupy less space than her body demanded. When they reached the homestead, Brunhilde surveyed the property with a professional eye. The sagging barn, the broken fencing, the overgrown garden, the house that listed slightly to one side. "Lot of work," she observed. "I know, I'm not much of a carpenter or rancher. I try, but I wasn't criticizing, I was calculating." She turned to him. "I'll need tools, lumber. You have any?" "Some, in the barn." "Good. I'll start tomorrow." She hesitated. "Where should I sleep?" Bart hadn't thought that far ahead. "There's a bedroom. Poppy and I have been sharing Margaret's old sewing room. You can have the main room." "That's your room?" "Was. Now it's yours. Until when we're properly married, I mean." He stumbled over the words, face burning. Brunhilde's expression softened. "Thank you for the consideration. Most men wouldn't bother." That night, after a simple supper of beans and cornbread, Bart showed Brunhilde to the bedroom. She had to duck under the doorframe. Inside, she looked around at the modest furnishings, the quilt Margaret had made, the single window overlooking the property. "It's more than I expected," she said quietly. "What did you expect?" "A barn loft, maybe a shed. Men who answered my previous letters wanted a workhorse, not a wife. Wanted my strength, but not my presence." She touched the quilt gently. "This is kind." After she closed the door, Bart sat with Poppy in the sewing room. His daughter looked up at him with eyes clearer than they'd been in months. "She's sad, Papa, like us." "I think you're right, sweetheart. But she's strong. She can fix things." "Maybe she can." Poppy snuggled against him. "I like her dress. It's pretty even though it's old." Bart kissed the top of her head, marveling at the mystery of children. Where he'd seen only strangeness, Poppy had seen beauty. Where he'd felt fear, she'd found comfort. Maybe his daughter was braver than he'd ever be. The next morning, Bart woke to sounds he didn't recognize. Hammering, sawing, the scrape of wood on wood. He dressed quickly and stepped outside to find Brunhilde already working. She'd changed from the wedding dress into men's work clothes that strained across her frame. But she moved with surprising grace. The barn door, which had hung crooked for a year, now swung straight on repaired hinges. "You've been up for hours," Bart said, amazed. "Habit. Carnival life starts before dawn." She set down her hammer. "Your chickens hadn't been fed. I took care of it. Hope that's all right." "More than all right. I usually do it after breakfast." "Why wait? Chickens don't care about breakfast schedules." She wiped sweat from her forehead. "Got a list of what needs doing. Fencing first, then the barn roof, then we tackle that irrigation problem in the north field." Bart stared. "How did you know about the irrigation?" "Walked the property at dawn. Ground's too dry in that section. You've got a blockage somewhere in the ditch from the creek." She pulled on work gloves that looked comically small on her hands. "I'll clear it this afternoon." For the next week, Bart watched in awe as Brunhilde transformed the homestead. She worked from dawn until dusk, accomplishing tasks that would have taken him months. She lifted fence posts he couldn't budge, repaired structural damage he deemed impossible, and organized the property with military efficiency. But she was also surprisingly gentle. When Poppy followed her around, chattering in her newly rediscovered voice, Brunhilde listened with genuine interest. She showed the little girl how to collect eggs without frightening the hens, how to identify useful plants in the overgrown garden, how to measure lumber for cutting. Bart tried to help, but found himself mostly getting in the way. His contributions were cooking meals, caring for Poppy, and handling the few tasks that required precision rather than strength. He felt increasingly useless, a familiar sensation from his childhood, when other boys mocked his slight build and quiet nature. One evening, as they sat on the porch after supper, Brunhilde broached the subject. "You're troubled." Bart, startled. "No, I'm grateful. You've done more in a week than I've managed in a year." "That's what troubles you. You think you're inadequate." He couldn't deny it. She continued, her voice gentle despite its roughness. "Bartholomew, you've kept your daughter alive and loved through grief that would have destroyed weaker men. You've maintained this property alone despite not being built for hard labor. You wrote an honest advertisement instead of false promises. That takes a different kind of strength." "It doesn't feel like strength." "Because you're measuring yourself against the wrong standard." She gestured at the property. "I can lift heavy things and intimidate creditors, but I can't cook worth a damn, can't soothe a frightened child the way you do, can't make Poppy laugh like you can." "We're partners, different strengths serving the same purpose." Her words settled something in Bart's chest. "Where did you learn to be so wise?" "Carnival life teaches you about human nature. People paid to see the freak show, but they stayed because we understood pain. We were all running from something." She paused. "I should tell you about Silas." Over the next hour, as stars emerged overhead and Poppy slept inside, Brunhilde told her story. Born unusually large, she'd grown to her current size by age 15. Her family, poor farmers, saw her as a burden. When Silas McCoy's traveling show came through, offering money for attractions, They sold her without hesitation. For 12 years, she'd been displayed as Brunhilde the giant bride, forced to wear the wedding dress as a costume, performing mock ceremonies for crowds who paid to laugh at the impossibility of any man marrying such a creature. "Silas owned us," she said. Body and soul, according to him. He was cruel in ways that left no visible marks, controlled everything, our money, our movements, our dignity. But he made a mistake. He taught me to read so I could write signs for the show. Once I could read, I learned about laws and contracts, learned that I could leave. How did you escape? Waited until the show was near the territorial border. Took my wages, what little he couldn't hide, and disappeared one night. Changed my name, dyed my hair, wore regular clothes. Kept the dress, though. It was the only thing that was ever mine, even if it represented captivity. She touched the fabric of her work shirt. I wear it on Sundays. Reclaiming it, I suppose. Bart absorbed this. You're worried he'll find you. He's possessive of his property, and he has connections, people who owe him favors across the territories. It's only a matter of time. Then we'll face him together. Brunhilde looked at him with surprise. Bartholomew, Silas is a dangerous man. I'm not brave. Everyone in town knows it. I've run from every fight my whole life. Bart met her eyes. But some things are worth standing for. You're one of them. Something shifted between them in that moment. The business arrangement they'd entered began transforming into something deeper. Brunhilde reached over and took his hand, her massive palm engulfing his completely. Thank you. They sat like that until the night grew cold, two broken people finding unexpected solace in each other. The following weeks brought routine and, surprisingly, joy. Poppy bloomed under Brunhilde's attention, talking constantly, laughing again, playing in ways she hadn't since Margaret's death. Bart found himself looking forward to evenings on the porch, to conversations that ranged from practical matters to philosophy, to the comfortable silence that sometimes settled between them. The townspeople remained suspicious. When Bart took Brunhilde to Sunday service, whispers followed them into the church. The Reverend's sermon seemed pointedly about conventional marriage and godly femininity. Afterward, several ranchers approached Bart with barely concealed mockery. That your wife, Higgins? Or hired muscle? Careful she don't crush you on your wedding night. Bart felt the old shame rising, but before he could respond, Brunhilde stepped forward. She didn't threaten or posture. She simply looked down at the men with an expression that promised consequences if they continued. They scattered like tumbleweeds. I can fight my own battles, Bart said, though without much conviction. Why should you, when I'm happy to fight them for both of us? She smiled. Besides, you fight different battles. You fight for Poppy's happiness, for the homestead's survival, for dignity in the face of mockery. That's harder than intimidating fools. Her perspective consistently surprised him. Most women he'd known, including Margaret, had wanted him to be more aggressive, more traditionally masculine. Brunhilde seemed to appreciate him exactly as he was. That evening, as Bart tucked Poppy into bed, his daughter asked the question he'd been dreading. When are you and Brunhilde getting married for real? What do you mean, sweetheart? She's not wearing her pretty dress anymore. She only wears it on Sundays, but she should wear it when you get married proper, with the Reverend and everything. Bart smoothed her hair. Would you like that? Yes. Then she'd really be my mama. And you'd be happy like you were with Mama Margaret. After Poppy fell asleep, Bart found Brunhilde on the porch, her usual evening spot. He sat beside her, gathering courage. Poppy asked when we're getting properly married. Brunhilde tensed. What did you tell her? That I'd discuss it with you. He took a breath. I know this wasn't a love match. We made an arrangement out of necessity. But these past weeks I've felt… I wonder if you might… He stumbled to a halt, frustrated by his inability to articulate feelings. Brunhilde saved him. I've come to care for you both, more than I expected, more than I thought I could again. Then maybe we should make it official, not just on paper, but in truth. Real vows, real partnership. Bartholomew, are you certain? I'm not what any man dreams of. You're everything this family needs, everything I need. He found his courage. I'm falling in love with you, Brunhilde, not despite who you are, but because of it. Her eyes filled with tears. I've never heard those words before. Never thought I would. Then hear them now. I love you. Will you truly marry me? She pulled him close, and he felt the strength in her arms, the steadiness of her presence, the warmth of her acceptance. When she kissed him, it was gentle despite her size, reverent despite her rough exterior. Yes, she whispered. Yes, they planned a simple ceremony for the following month, giving Brunhilde time to properly mend her wedding dress, giving Bart time to gather his courage to face the town's judgment, giving Poppy time to prepare for a new mother officially joining their family. But 3 weeks before the wedding, a letter arrived that changed everything. Bart retrieved it from the mailbox at the property's edge, noting the unfamiliar handwriting and the postmark from Denver. Inside, the message was brief and chilling. Dear Bart, you don't know me, but I know your bride. Brunhilde belongs to me. She signed a 5-year contract with my show and she's only served 4. I'm coming to collect my property. Don't try to hide her. I have legal papers and the law on my side. We'll be in Timber Ridge by month's end. Silas McCoy. Bart's hands shook as he brought the letter inside. Brunhilde was teaching Poppy how to knead bread dough, both of them flour-dusted and laughing. When she saw his face, her smile died. What is it? He handed her the letter. She read it twice, her expression hardening into something cold and distant. I knew this would come. I hoped we'd have more time. Poppy looked between them, confused. What's wrong? Nothing, sweetheart, Brunhilde said, but her voice carried no conviction. Go play outside for a bit. After Poppy left, Brunhilde sat heavily at the table. That contract he mentions is real. I signed it when I was 18, didn't understand what I was agreeing to. It's probably still legally binding. But you're a person, not property. He can't… In the eyes of the law, contracts matter more than circumstances. Silas has money and lawyers. I have nothing. She looked up at Bart. I should leave. If I go now, he won't bother you and Poppy. You'll be safe. Absolutely not. Bartholomew, you don't understand what he's capable of. He'll destroy you to get to me. Then let him try. Bart's voice carried a steel he didn't know he possessed. I've spent my whole life running from conflict. Not this time. Not when it matters. You can't fight him. He'll have armed men, legal authority. Then we'll find another way. There's always another way. He took her hands. You told me I have different strengths. Let me use them. Over the next days, Bart formulated a plan. He rode to the territorial courthouse and researched contract law. He discovered that Silas's contract, while seemingly legitimate, had a crucial flaw. It had been signed by a minor without parental consent, making it void. But proving that required documentation, Brunhilde didn't have. Birth records from a family that had disowned her. He sent telegrams to county clerks across 3 territories, searching for any record of Brunhilde's birth. He wrote to the territorial marshal's office, inquiring about Silas McCoy's legal standing. He consulted with the town's lawyer, a man who owed him a favor from years past. Meanwhile, Brunhilde prepared for the worst. She taught Poppy how to hide in the root cellar if dangerous men came. She fortified the homestead, reinforcing doors and windows. She practiced with the rifle Bart owned but had never fired in anger. "If it comes to fighting," she said one evening, "I need you to take Poppy and run." "I'm not leaving you." "Bartholomew—" "No, we face this together, or not at all." Her eyes searched his face, looking for the fear she expected. She found determination instead, fragile but genuine. On the day Silas was due to arrive, Bart, Brunhilde, and Poppy waited in the homestead. Bart had asked the town lawyer to be present as a witness. The Reverend had also agreed to come, though he'd made his disapproval of their unconventional relationship clear. When hoofbeats announced visitors, Brunhilde stood, her frame blocking the doorway. Bart positioned himself beside her, Poppy behind them both. Silas McCoy emerged from a hired carriage, flanked by two large men who were clearly hired muscle. He was smaller than Bart expected, a weasel-faced man in an expensive suit, carrying himself with unearned authority. "Brunhilde, there you are, my dear. Time to come home." "This is my home," Brunhilde replied, her voice flat. "Come now, don't be difficult. You signed a contract. You owe me another year." He pulled papers from his jacket. "It's all legal. Territorial law is on my side." The town lawyer stepped forward. "Actually, Mr. McCoy, I've reviewed your contract. It's void." Silas's confidence faltered. "What?" "Miss Brunhilde was 17 when she signed. Minor contracts require parental consent, which you didn't obtain. Additionally, Mr. Higgins has filed a formal complaint with the territorial marshal regarding your exploitation of traveling show workers. There's an investigation pending." "That's absurd. I've done nothing illegal." "Perhaps you'd like to discuss that with the marshal's deputy. He's waiting in town to speak with you." Silas's face reddened. "You think some backwater lawyer's tricks will stop me? I'll have this overturned. "You'll leave," Bart interrupted, his voice quiet but firm. "You'll leave my property, my family, and my wife alone. If you return, I'll make certain every newspaper in the territory knows how you exploit vulnerable people." "Your wife?" Silas laughed. "You haven't even married her yet." "That's easily remedied." Bart turned to the Reverend. "Reverend Wilson, would you perform the ceremony? Now?" The Reverend sputtered. "This is highly irregular. There are protocols." "But it's legal, isn't it? You have the authority." "Well, yes, but then please, marry us, right now, in front of witnesses." Brunhilde looked at Bart with wonder, and something deeper. Love mixed with awe. "Are you certain?" "Never more certain of anything." The ceremony happened there in the yard, witnessed by lawyers, muscle for hire, and a theatrical showman whose plans had crumbled. Brunhilde wore her work clothes because there'd been no time to change into the wedding dress, but she'd never looked more beautiful to Bart. His hands shook as he took hers, but his voice remained steady through the vows. When the Reverend pronounced them married, Brunhilde kissed Bart with joy and relief. Poppy cheered. Silas McCoy climbed back into his carriage, defeated and furious, his hired men following. The lawyer and Reverend congratulated them awkwardly and departed, leaving the newly married family alone. That evening, after Poppy was asleep, Bart and Brunhilde sat on the porch in their usual spots, except now as husband and wife. "You were braver today than you know," Brunhilde said. "I was terrified." "That's what made it brave." She took his hand. "You stood up to him not with strength or violence, but with intelligence and law. You beat him at his own game." "We beat him. Together." She smiled. "Yes, together." Bart hesitated, then asked the question that had been building. "Brunhilde, earlier you mentioned being my wife. As in truly my wife, in every way. I don't want to presume, but... She silenced him with a kiss, deeper than before, full of promise. When she pulled back, her eyes held warmth and desire. In bed, in shower, or living room, everywhere you want, she said softly. I'm yours, Bartholomew, completely, if you'll have me. His answer came without words. He stood and offered his hand. She took it, and they walked inside together, closing the door on the world and its judgments. The following Sunday, Brunhilde wore her wedding dress to church, properly married and properly proud. The townspeople stared, but their whispers held less venom. Bart walked beside her, his hand in hers, his daughter on his other side. They were a family now, legally and spiritually, bound not by convention, but by choice. The homestead thrived under their combined efforts. Bart handled finances and planning, while Brunhilde provided the physical labor. Poppy grew happier each day, calling Brunhilde Mama without hesitation. Creditors who'd circled like vultures backed off when they saw the operation becoming profitable. Winter came early that year. On the first snowfall, Bart woke to find Brunhilde already outside, clearing pathways with an efficiency that would have taken him hours. He brought her coffee and stood watching her work, marveling at the turn his life had taken. She noticed him and grinned. "Admiring the view?" "Always." She set down her shovel and pulled him close, snow dusting them both. "I never thought I'd have this. A home, a husband who sees me as more than a curiosity, a daughter who loves me. And I never thought I'd find someone who made me feel strong despite my weaknesses. You're not weak, Bartholomew. You're gentle. There's a difference." She kissed his forehead. "You saved me as much as I saved you. Then we're even." "No, we're partners. That's better than even." They stood in the snow, two improbable people who'd found improbable happiness, and the world, for once, felt perfectly balanced.